The term GOAT has been completely distorted over the last few years. It is a term that actually means greatest of all time, but nowadays it is simply used to indicate your preference on any aspect. That player who faithfully represented the way you thought basketball was best played while you were growing up and put on incredible performances in the NBA. Welcome to Eternity Hoops. Today we are going to evaluate the GOAT of every decade. During the 1950s, the way basketball was played was very different. We've talked about him several times already on the channel, but the truth is that George Mikan's superiority during these premature stages of professional basketball is noteworthy. The Lakers center was the first dominant big in the history of the NBA. He forced rule changes that were important for the development of basketball, such as the possession clock or the increase in paint area. Mikan won 7 championships during his career in the NBL, BAA, and NBA, and his influence was so great that he was chosen among the 75 best players in the history of the league in 2021. But in the 1960s, the NBA saw a surge in popularity. The performances of a young Wilt Chamberlain, who was beginning to offer a consistency never seen before, began to show that there was still plenty of room for improvement in the league. However, despite his splendid performance, where he even achieved the best scoring record in a single game with 100 points, the title of GOAT in the 60s must go to Bill Russell. The Boston Celtics player was an all-star in 13 of the 14 seasons he played in the NBA. The only exception was his rookie year. But the most incredible thing is that he managed to win an absurd 11 championship rings in 12 seasons. A record that still stands today, and considering the difficulty of being crowned champion in today's basketball, it looks like it is a record that will remain for the rest of our lives. Russell was a spectacular leader and a defensive anchor who averaged an incredible 22.5 rebounds per game as a career mark. Although he was not a spectacular scorer, he was a very efficient one, shooting over 41% from the field in every season of his career. A mark which for the time was of enormous difficulty. During the 70s, there was a player who managed to make a spectacular difference, although the truth is that his championships did not come until the 80s. He was Louis Alcindor Jr., or as he is better known, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem began his career in Milwaukee, where he played 6 seasons in the NBA with spectacular scoring averages, peaking at 34.8 points per game in 1972, the season after winning his first championship. In addition, his efficiency was also superhuman, with 55% shooting from the field during all stages of his career. But although Kareem won no less than 6 MVPs throughout the 70s, his most important collective triumphs did not come until the 80s. When the player was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, he won another 5 NBA championships and ended up becoming the league's all-time leading scorer. In fact, he has maintained that status until this very season, more than 30 years later. A lethal scorer whose signature move, the skyhook, has become one of the icons of basketball. One of his teammates during this time with the Lakers in the 1980s was Earvin Johnson Jr., who, thanks to his spectacular skills with the orange ball, became known as Magic Johnson. The 6'9" point guard revolutionized this basketball position since his arrival in the league, leading the NBA in assists for 4 seasons and achieving a career mark of 11.2 per game. Like Kareem, he won 5 rings with the Californian franchise, placing him in the Olympus of historic NBA players before having to leave the league when it was confirmed that he was a carrier of the HIV virus. Larry Bird, on the other hand, was the other greatest exponent of the 80s who can dispute our title of GOAT of the decade with Magic Johnson. Bird was a very complete player, but he was characterized by his ability to score and shoot from long distance. He won 3 regular season MVP awards and 3 NBA championships, with his 3 Finals MVP trophies. 2 players who elevated the rivalry of the 2 most successful franchises in the league, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics, to the highest level, and who paved the way for the arrival of our next player on the list. The 90s simply can't have another owner. Michael Jordan elevated the NBA to global status and expanded it around the world, accessing a market far larger than any sport had ever seen before. His plasticity and moves were unprecedented, and the player demonstrated extraordinary talent from his rookie season. Jordan won 6 championships with the Bulls from 1992 to 1998, along with his trusty sidekick, Scottie Pippen. MJ was not only the most spectacular basketball player anyone had ever seen, but he also exuded an aura that was unmatched. His contract with Nike marked a before and after in sports sponsorship, and his legend is still remembered to this day. Jordan is even considered by many people as the greatest athlete in history in any sport, but what is clear is that he changed the way basketball was played, and all the players who have appeared after him have based their movements and their aesthetics on that of MJ, often synonymous with perfection. What better way to do it than with the player who most represented this winning attitude, and whose game was also reminiscent of Michael's game? Kobe Bryant has been one of the best players in the history of the league, and without a doubt, the GOAT of a decade in the 2000s that put the Los Angeles Lakers back on the map. Probably the most important player in the history of the Los Angeles Lakers franchise. Kobe won 5 NBA championships during the decade, including a three-peat along with Shaquille O'Neal, and forming one of the most fearsome and iconic duos ever seen on the basketball courts. Their superiority was so great that the only ones who could stop them were themselves. The Lakers went through a series of bad seasons, but in the late 2000s, they returned to the pinnacle of world basketball. Kobe retired with only 1 MVP, in part because of a media narrative that limited his accolades. But his influence on the court and his mentality have made him the idol of an entire generation, who understood basketball in the same way as the legendary shooting guard. When Kobe passed his prime, his replacement was none other than LeBron James himself. For some, the best player in NBA history, and for others, the second best only behind MJ. LeBron has had a torturous road in which he has had to play against true super teams like Kevin Durant's Warriors. But he also enjoyed groups with enormous talent like the Miami Heat of the early 2010s. His athleticism and consistency have allowed him to snatch the record for most points scored in regular season history from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he is also by far the all-time leading scorer in the playoffs. 4 MVP trophies, 4 championships with different franchises, and 4 finals MVPs. The most complete player that has ever played in the league, and after 20 seasons, he is still at the highest level. The GOAT of a decade that has had players like Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry, but because of his superiority, is able to take this debate with ease. But in 2023, we still do not know who will take the baton from LeBron. The truth is that there is not much left for the point forward to end his career, having even given some hints of his first thoughts about retirement. But as of today, there are not many players who can compete on a level playing field with the careers of the stars we have seen in this video. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nikola Jokic are the only players who seem to be up to the task, and who have already proven to be capable of winning championships with franchises that until then have not had great sporting success. But still, it seems unfair to compare the best players of each decade. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments, and see you in the next video.